MS Now.
Thank you so much for letting us into your homes tonight. We are grateful. The Beat with Ari Melber starts right now. Hi, Ari.
Hi, Nicole. Thanks so much. Welcome to The Beat. I'm Ari Melber, and we're coming on the air here on another election night in America. There's a lot on the line. Voters in 6 different states will actually be casting ballots, and the one that has the most scrutiny is a key House race in Kentucky. Polls closing there just moments ago, I could tell you, and we have some special coverage planned. If you watch The Beat, or frankly, polls closing there just moments ago, I could tell you, and we have some special coverage planned. If you watch The Beat, or frankly a lot of news these days, you've probably heard of the Republican who is now fighting for his job. He defied Trump on the big issue of Epstein and faces a more Trumpified challenger. So I have a special report on that coming up. Ali Velshi is going to be at the big board. We have Che Komanduri here, so it's a big one. We also have reporting on the scandal at Trump's DOJ with the details about over $1 billion being set aside for a thug fund that is unconstitutional and probably unlawful, according to many experts. Someone who has been fighting on these constitutional issues is Senator Cory Booker. And he's actually my special guest tonight, live on that. So we're looking forward to hearing from the senator. Thank you for being here. We begin on the election with Ali Velshi, who is, of course, MS Now's chief data reporter and is at the big board as promised. What can you tell us?
All right, as you said, Ari, there are 6 states holding elections tonight: Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Alabama, Georgia, Idaho, and Oregon. But we're going to start looking at Kentucky, partially because polls are closed in half the state. Kentucky is one of those states that that splits between Eastern and Central time zone. But the particular district we're looking for right now is District 4 in Kentucky. It is closed. It's in the eastern part of the state, and this is where Thomas Massie, the incumbent, is up against Ed Gallagher, who is supported by Donald Trump. Thomas Massie is a thorn in the side. He is a gadfly to Donald Trump. He has worked with Democrats to advance a number of bills, including the Epstein Transparency Act. We're going to be looking very closely at a few things. We haven't got results in just yet. We're waiting for them to come in. As you can see, there's 0 at the moment, but they're going to count fairly fast. I'm looking at a few counties that I want to concentrate on tonight. Campbell County up on the top, Kenton County, and Boone County. These 3 counties are 3 of the most populous counties in the entire state. So when we see the numbers in from there, we're going to see what happens. Pete Hegseth was in Boone County this weekend. Candidate. We also have over here Oldham County in the western part of the state. Again, that is one of the 4 most populous counties in the state. So while we're going to be getting results from all of these counties, those 3 on top and Oldham County are the ones I'm looking at. I'm looking at 2 other counties tonight just to see how things go. Right above, right below that is Shelby County. Shelby County is where Ed Gallagher is from. So you're going to expect him to do very, very well there. We'll see very early on whether that's actually happening. And Lewis County over here on the eastern part of the district, that's where Thomas Massie is from. So again, between the 4 populous counties we're looking for and the 2 that the candidates are from, we should get a fairly early read as to where this is going. The polling is quite tight. Let me tell you this. Thomas Massie campaigning very clearly on the fact that he is someone who will hold everybody to account in Congress, whether they are Republicans and Democrats. There's a valid discussion as to whether he has been as tough on Republicans as he has been on Democrats, but the bottom line is Donald Trump wants him out, and Donald Trump and his allies and his cabinet and his MAGA friends have been working to defeat Thomas Massie tonight. If he is defeated, that will be a very big deal. Through the course of the night, Ari, as polls start closing, I'll bring you Kentucky. We'll go to Georgia, and we'll go to Pennsylvania as well. We're watching close races in those states.
Yeah, Ali, Kentucky, clearly a big referendum on those Trump moves. And then other places where people are watching to sort of pro rata figure out what it means for the midterms. You got a busy night. We'll be coming back to you this hour. So thank you, sir.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it. Turning to Donald Trump trying to abuse DOJ powers for his own benefit and take your taxpayer dollars. You have this proposal that's completely unprecedented. They say they're going to do it. Of course, that could still be tested and stopped in court, like so many other things that Trump has tried this second term. Do it, of course, that could still be tested and stopped in court, like so many other things that Trump has tried this second term. But it's over $1 billion in a thug fund, money that would go to people who've been convicted of crimes or otherwise clash with the government. The DOJ's details that they put out make it even worse than it sounded in those initial reports, because they're claiming that this deal, this plan, will shut down the IRS so that it won't ever pursue claims it could have against Trump and his family and his companies over unpaid taxes. Politico reporting on that detail, just to spell that out, that would mean that if there were legitimate open inquiries, not into just Trump but his family, he suddenly gets a corrupt, nepotistic kind of exemption. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche has signed the document. He has now one of the fastest credibility and corruption crisis of anyone who served in that job. The IRS is allegedly, they say, barred from doing these audits or moving forward. Whether another attorney general will retract and erase that, or Mr. Blanche might face ethics and other concerns, is all up in the air because this is unprecedented. But this is not the end of the story based on the way our system of government's at least supposed to work. It would be a kind of favoritism for Donald Trump and his family, a kind of special, public, admitted Nepo baby exemption that practically invites more tax problems for the children you see on your screen, the grown adult children of Donald Trump, if they're getting publicly allowed to have a get out of tax audit free card. This is a scandal. As I've reported since its inception, it looks bigger than Watergate, both in size and scope and in the political crimes it can relate to. The DOJ here is trying to help Trump with his own lawsuit and his own IRS that he oversees. So all of it is a massive conflict of interest. The references that have been made seem to plan to fund people who, by any other stretch, including what many Republicans have previously said, people who should actually be in court action there, because if you can take $2 billion, why not 10 or 100 billion? Indeed, if this is a precedent that Trump gets and Republicans allow, there would be the potential of future presidents in other parties with other agendas trying the same trick. Todd Blanche, who has not yet become the permanent attorney general, Trump dangling the job as he's used other temp positions to try to get even more from him, has, and I say this as someone who's covered and followed the DOJ for some time, disgraced himself more quickly with more lawless claims and talk than any acting attorney general we've seen in this short a stretch of time. When asked the basic question of whether Mr. Blanche, as acting attorney general, as an attorney, as an American citizen, as someone who could later face ethics sanction or lose his bar license, whether Mr. Blanche would rule out paying people who attacked police and tried to overthrow the U.S. government and democracy, well, here's the exchange.
You moved to create this fund.
I didn't move. I did not move.
The settlement result, Mr. Attorney General, come on. Simple question. Will individuals who assaulted Capitol Hill police officers be eligible for this fund?
Well, as it makes plain, anybody is...
And will you commit that none of this money will go to President Trump's campaign donors?
I am not committing to anything.
You're appointing 4 of the 5 members.
I am appointing all 5
certainly set up.
Is it a coincidence that the General Counsel of the Department of Treasury resigned yesterday?
I don't know if it's a coincidence.
No. Have you looked or checked?
Have I checked?
Yeah.
I have not.
Acting Attorney General Blanche ducking the questions. It should not be hard to say when you're the top prosecutor in the United States that you won't be taking taxpayer money and handing it to violent convicts or people who attack police or people who stormed the Capitol. And if they wanted to say that, obviously they could. And if he had any confidence that this fund wouldn't ultimately include those people who Donald Trump, of course, has embraced and freed, well, here we are. Because he expects that he may or will be paying them, he can't rule it out. And because he can't rule it out, he looks like an anti-police, anti-Blue Lives attorney general. As for that Treasury reference, a Trump appointee resigned after the fund was announced. The Treasury is involved, of course, in handing out this kind of money if it's not stopped in court. Nobel Prize-winning economist Paul Krugman discusses this as the looting of America. Axios talking about a presidential profit machine. This is totally unprecedented, likely unlawful, although we have to technically check in the courts. It certainly hasn't been appropriated by Congress. And even some Republicans are part of a growing chorus of criticism.
It's thoroughly illegal and unconstitutional.
Ethics attorneys are saying tonight it's quite astonishing.
This is the swampiest thing I could possibly imagine.
Yeah. Well, first, it's probably illegal.
People are concerned about making their own ends meet, not about putting a slush fund together without a legal precedent.
An incredible level of corruption against the U.S. taxpayer.
Secondly, it's outrageous.
What I want to know is how a fund was created and what its purpose is, and the legality of creating a fund that Congress hasn't had anything to say about.
There's no judge involved. Neither the courts nor Congress is approving any settlement or overseeing any part of this. This is just Trump getting a ton of taxpayer money to dole out.
And finally, it's corrupt.
What are your thoughts about this weaponization fund from the president at this point?
Yeah, not a big fan.
The top Republican in the Senate, which is the upper body, that's the most important Republican in Congress, John Thune, and public agreement that Trump demands, that actually is something. And it shows you that Thune may be trying to at least signal to the rest of his caucus that they don't want to go along with this for a variety of reasons, and hopefully, he may think, invite a few more side. One of Trump's tricks that we've seen on everything from immigration to tariffs is to start really big and bold and shocking, and then see what he can get away with. And when things don't work out, the tariffs were narrowed in court, well, they move on to other topics and hope people don't notice how often this happens. In the business context, we've heard about him chickening out. We are witnessing this here at a very high stakes level, but the fact that he's claiming to have the power that prevents the IRS from ever not only auditing and doing its job on him, but his family members, which doesn't even deny nepotism, it admits it, that he's claiming they can hand out this money, doesn't mean he'll ultimately get away with it, especially as we approach midterms and his lame duck era. As for the fund, it's structured where they're trying to keep secret those who get paid and the amounts they receive. That is a further recipe for corruption and disaster. It also makes you wonder, if Donald Trump is so proud of so much of this and talks about how he can get away with anything, why does he need to hide what he's doing with your money? We're joined by Democratic Senator Cory Booker, who's on the Judiciary Committee. Your reaction to this fund tonight, and can Democrats stop it?
I mean, this is literally one of the most brazen, crass, craven, corrupt things that he's done. And it's so obvious that there's just no justification for it. And anybody who is not speaking up in Congress is complicit in this mass theft from the American people at a time that they're seeing their prices skyrocket. We see a president is finding all kinds of creative ways to enrich him and the corrupt people around him. To enrich him and the corrupt people around him.
The judiciary has oversight, as you know, and I want to emphasize to the audience, part of this is a campaign to make it seem like they have powers they probably don't have. As a journalist, I can't get ahead of what the courts will do. We don't have a ruling yet. But the Wall Street Journal put it plainly and noted, Senator, the settlement, as the Trump administration calls it, is vulnerable to challenge in the courts because, quote, there's no obvious connection between Trump's IRS claims and the people getting payouts, that it looks more like a smash and grab, Senator.
Well, it doesn't look like a smash and grab. This is them smashing any principles of justice and fairness and grabbing hundreds of millions of dollars to dole out to corrupt people who have broken the law, all while also amidst it doing something that is an assault on one of the most important precedents in our nation, which is that no one is above the law. And so Donald Trump is trying to give himself and his family immunity for doing something that every American does. Pay your taxes. And so again, where is the Republican Party right now? Who, if Obama did even a fraction of any of this stuff, they would be revolting and marching in the streets. But their kleptocracy that they're allowing to be created, that is robbing this country, spending taxpayer dollars on ballrooms and unjust wars that are making the Middle East worse, none of them are saying what they should be doing or using their power to check and balance a president that is out of control and deeply, deeply corrupting our system. He is not the only one that is corrupt. The enablers, those who are silent, those who are complicit, they are the ones that are corrupt as well.
I mentioned that he backs down sometimes when there is sustained pushback. We saw he was charged with the shooting of a Venezuelan immigrant for tactics that, as described, looked quite reckless. 4 counts of second-degree assault, a felony, 1 count of falsely reporting a crime, a misdemeanor relating to shooting into a house in a way that didn't seem proportionate and also jeopardized children. Your view of these kind of charges and the import of holding ICE accountable if it goes beyond its purview?
Well, that's the word, is accountability. Remember, we have said we are not funding an out-of-control, reckless agency since when Alex Preddy was killed. We know what's happening in our communities. And yet, again, the Congress was formed, if you read Federalist Paper number 47, to provide a check and a balance on a president, or especially to stop a president from overstretching his power, for breaching any kind of bonds of propriety or justice. And so we have a president who has weaponized the Justice Department. Actually, he is using it as his own legal team to pursue his alleged enemies and to enrich himself and his family. He is allowing an immigration pursuit that is violating all of our decency as a country, all of our collective values, that is not popular amongst anybody when it comes to just the general political spectrum of the base of our country. We are in a constitutional crisis, not just because we have a president that is operating kleptocracy, but because we have a Congress controlled by Republicans who is doing nothing about it. And a Supreme Court, by the way, that is corrupt in itself as they take unjust riches from billionaires who have matters before the court. Look at all the gifts that they're getting, the vacations that they're getting, the RV that they're getting. This is the worst, most corrupt federal government we have ever seen, and we are doing nothing about it. It is time for the people to understand what's going on in this election and demand that the Democratic Party start stepping up on corruption issues themselves, including stopping Democrats and Republicans from trading stock and letting all this corporate money flow into our system. The same people that Donald Trump loaded on a plane to China as he invested in NVIDIA stock and then let NVIDIA chips go to China, seeing himself again making unjust riches.
Yeah, you're connecting some of those dots, and that's what we see a lot of people in the country upset about in this economy with affordability, what's sometimes called the Epstein class, or all these people playing by different rules. You mentioned the court. Final question is what your colleagues are doing on voting rights after that ruling that really shreds the law that Martin Luther King helped get passed to defend voting rights of black Americans and the democracy.
This is such a grievous wound, opening wounds that have not even fully been healed in this country. I'm standing here as just 4 generations from slavery. My parents, grandparents, great-grandparents fought in that post-Reconstruction period amongst terror and violence and killing to try to make this democracy real for everyone by passing the Voting Rights Act. And this corrupt court has now just sent us back to that post-Reconstruction period when Southern state legislators were passing laws to make sure that black people did not have fair representation. This election is no longer about Democrat versus Republican. Look at what this president is doing. Look at his foreign policy, his domestic policy. Look at what this court is doing. Everyone needs to know this election is about justice. It is about democracy. It is about protecting a system of government that for 250 years, black folks and immigrants, people fought and died for, and not letting ourselves be dragged back to rigged maps by this president who started all the way to a Congress that isn't doing their job and needs to be thrown out of office so we can begin to fight back on all of this corruption, all of this upending our democratic ideals.
Yeah. On more than one topic, Senator Booker, thank you for joining us tonight.
I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Thank you for letting me vent.
Well, I think some people could relate. Thank you, sir. Our thanks to Cory Booker. Coming up, we turn back to that race that Galli Velch and I were discussing just at the top of the hour, and how Republicans who stood up to Trump, including on Epstein, are now facing this battle for their jobs. By the end of the hour, a story we haven't hit yet this week, Elon Musk losing big in court. I'll tell you about that. But we're up next in 90 seconds. Turning to the primary that is probably the one most people are watching, certainly drawing a lot of money. It's the House primary in Kentucky, and it's a test of this Epstein revolt that has upended Donald Trump's second term. The incumbent Republican worked with Democrats, Congressman Thomas Massie, Republican, and has become basically the Liz Cheney of the GOP and Trump-Epstein crisis, in the same way that Cheney stood up to Trump on the insurrection and democracy issues. In the second term, we have seen Massie stand up repeatedly and boldly to Donald Trump's Epstein secrecy. And the parallel also matters because Massey, like Cheney, has long been a staunch conservative, the type of person who before Trump was seen as, if anything, a kind of loud, proud conservative Republican, not someone that they'd call a rhino or moderate on some issues. And yet on this principal issue of Epstein, well, Massey drew the line.
The perpetrators are being protected because they're rich and powerful and political donors to the establishment here in Washington, D.C. I prefer, actually, it goes straight to the president. I believe he's trying to protect friends and donors. I think we need to give the DOJ a chance to go back through and correct their mistakes.
How long do they have to do that? How long do they have to redact these files?
They're already breaking the law. This is bigger than Watergate. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion. Of it.
Men need to be perp walked in handcuffs to the jail. At some point, somebody got to Pam Bondi and said, it's your job to cover this up.
This wasn't just one vote or one speech. As you can see, Massey was a leader. And because the House was narrow in the majority, Massey, with a couple other Republicans like MTG, broke Trump. And once the dam broke, it turned out there weren't a lot of Republicans left standing by him. And so they had a veto-proof majority to release the Epstein files, which thoroughly exposed many people, including some people in Trump's cabinet, their lies about Epstein Island, the stories we've been covering. A lot of that draws back to Massey. And so after bringing the files to light, well, Trump, who had claimed at one point he was fine with all this, clearly wasn't, acting hurt, angry, and like he still had more to hide. He would go after Massey and show his interest in getting involved in the details of politics. Trump was handpicking a person to run against him, where they've raised a lot of money, all of this to send a message to anyone who apparently would stand with the survivors, something Trump claimed to do before breaking that vow for files release. This House primary race, as I mentioned, is now the most expensive in history, over $30 million, a lot of that through those big mysterious PAC monies, and it's PAC money funds, and it's against Massey in the main. So this is how our politics works today. Someone does something like this, other Republicans are forced to pretend they agree with Massey, but then the system drops tens of millions of dollars on a House primary. It's not even a general election yet. As Velshi mentioned, the polling is tight, and Trump and his allies, in doing this much organizing and fundraising and intervention, suggests that they still have Epstein living in their mind, that they still are angry about it, worried about it, want to send a message, don't stand up to Trump on Epstein. So, of course, what the results are, but the fact that a congressman you probably hadn't heard much about a few years ago, who is one of over 400 people, is now on par with the president, just shows how big this story and this embarrassment has been for Donald Trump. And remember, he was forced to sign the Epstein into law because of the public pressure and sometimes bipartisan pressure from the Massey-Kano wing.
The White House is privately trying to tamp down any support for transparency around the Epstein files, even though that is what an overwhelming majority of Americans, including MAGA voters, want.
President Trump is doing just about everything in his power to quash a story that just will not go away.
President Trump says he has signed the bill to release the Epstein files.
No surprise that the president didn't sign this bill publicly, because the president wants to turn attention away from this whole Epstein files saga.
It was a double loss for Trump. An issue that exposed his history, his alleged malfeasance, his handling of the DOJ, his ties to Epstein, even if he was not accused of any criminal wrongdoing in that case. But all of that he wanted to hide, and instead it was out front and center. And then second, it revealed that the narrative we sometimes hear that the Republicans in Congress will do anything for him was wrong. Massey led the effort that led to the supermajority that meant Trump couldn't stop them. And that's a massive rift in the GOP. Today's primary both reflects Massey's strength, how big he got, how important this is, but also the Trump school of politics that tries to make sure, even if there is a Cheney or a Massey out there, people who are actually willing to stand up and risk parts of their career to do what they think is the right thing, that there will be hell to pay in Trump's MAGA version of the GOP. And that's that there will be hell to pay in Trump's MAGA version of the GOP. And that's the story I want to get into with Che Komanduri, who's been covering and thinking about this a lot as we track these results that are coming in moment by moment to our newsroom. We'll be right back. We're joined by Che Komanduri, veteran of several presidential campaigns, including Obama's, and he has been thinking about the Massey race. This is someone who, more than most members of Congress, actually upended part of Trump's first term. Not many people think we would have had Epstein Files Act passed without him. And now we're seeing more money in this primary than any other in history. It speaks to both his impact, but also why his job's on the line tonight. What does this race say to you?
Yeah, I think that even if Thomas Massey falls short tonight, the reality is, my expectation is that he will have really overperformed the other Trump Republican challengers to Donald Trump. Just last week, you saw Bill Cassidy only get 25% of the vote in a Republican primary in Louisiana. Now, Cassidy's strategy after he voted to impeach Trump 6 years ago was then to suck up to Trump. I mean, he actually voted for RFK Jr. of all things. Massey has taken an opposite tact. He is actually arguing against Trump based on conservative first principles. He's arguing against him on spending. He's arguing against him on the Iran war. And most importantly, he is arguing against him on Epstein. And I think if Massey goes down tonight, it will show that the Republican Party is truly a cult of personality. It is much more about what Donald Trump says and wants you to do than it is about any sort of conservative principles.
The wider context is moving away from Trump, even though the way our primaries work means that it can be really distorted. But if we widen out, I want to show the retirements. You've got over 35 House Republicans just choosing to retire rather than run in what they expect to be tough midterms, 7 in the Senate. So you have people like MTG who made their points and left, and then you have Massey tonight trying to survive while being a kind of independent voice. And I wonder why, Che, you think that's sort of undercounted in our politics. I mentioned the narrative is, oh, no one will stand up to Trump. In fact, he's very unpopular. They've stood up to him on Epstein and the war. The MAGA pundits online and digital are pretty loud lately. And it's not nothing to have 37 people say, I'd rather quit than run with you. And another handful like Massey say, I'm not really with you, but we'll see if I can keep my seat.
Yeah, I mean, we don't generally track retirements and make them big stories because they don't really drive news cycles. They're very quiet events. You know, what Tom Massey did was a very loud event. What Marjorie Taylor Greene did was a very loud event where she actually openly opposed Trump. What has happened here with these Republicans is they don't want to actively oppose Trump. They don't want to pay the consequences of that. I do remember that Mitt Romney said that several Republicans told him the reason they didn't vote for Trump's impeachment after January 6th was that they were concerned about the security of themselves and their families. I think that that's actually a big part of the thinking here, that if we say something publicly and loudly against Trump, we really put ourselves in his crosshairs. We put ourselves at risk of the wrath of MAGA and the MAGA mob, a mob that, by the way, might be more empowered as a result of the slush fund that you talked about at the top of the show that's been created. It's much easier to money some other way. I'm going to try to live my life in some other way. It's much easier to do that.
No, you're being direct, and these are difficult conversations, but you can compare it to if you're playing, you know, street basketball and there's a little rough and tumble foul, but everyone leaves the court and goes home. That's one type of game. But if you have reason to believe that someone else is going to come beat you up or your family or shoot you after the game, it changes how you play on that court. And American politics is supposed to be governed by the rule of law, peaceful transfer of power. Trump's the first person to break that. Tonight he's trying to fund violent criminals in a spirit of political violence. This is the world we're in. And you know me, I take great pains to be fair and nonpartisan, but that's the actual place we're at. And so you're reminding us why some of those retirements happened. I'm curious what you think about the other way it can backfire, which is there are candidates like Massey or Cornyn who might do better as an independent-minded conservative in the general than the Trump stooges that are sometimes being run as their replacements.
You would think so. I think the problem is that the evidence I'm seeing is a lot of the GOP grassroots seem to be all in on Trump. And they seem to be doing this even though, you know, the reason that he's going against Massey is entirely because of Epstein. I mean, Trump is literally covering up perhaps his own behavior, certainly the behavior of others, you know, and their connection with this very, shall we say, shady character, Jeffrey Epstein. You know, so the fact that Republicans are not outraged enough about that to sort of say, hey, we're with Tom Massey overwhelmingly and not with this other guy that Trump has put up as a stooge for him, that speaks volumes really about them and about who they are. And it really also says to Democrats, you know, going forward, this is going to be a very complex and difficult picture. You know, even if Democrats, you know, going forward, this is going to be a very complex and difficult picture. You know, even if Democrats win the Congress, and I believe that they will this fall, even if they do, governing is going to be very difficult when you have a situation where Donald Trump enjoys 75, 80% approval among Republicans. That means that things that you do to try to curb his corruption, his other behaviors, is simply not going to be met with any kind of cooperation on the other side of the aisle.
Right, which speaks to the stakes tonight. And if Massey were to win, it would be exception to the rule you've described, but it's a rule that has many other data points. Che, you tell it like it is, as you understand it, not as we might wish it to be, which makes you a valuable analyst, if also sometimes, if I may say so,
right,
a bit of a political bummer, a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah. Well, maybe if Massey does win and it's a bad day for Trump, you know, it'll all come as a pleasant surprise, you know.
We'll see. We'll see, but people can read between your lines. Che, good to see you.
Right.
We're going to fit in a break. When we come back, a major trial that Elon Musk just lost. That's news. We've got it for you coming up.
مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على الحبيب الذي أجاءنا هدى يا رب بالنور أكرم مهجتي واغفر ذنوبي وهون كربتي أنت الرجاء إذا ضاقت بنا الدنيا وبذكرك العالي تحيا روحنا الله يا مولانا أنت الرحيم وأنت هادينا الله يا رحمن بنورك اجعل قلوبنا إيمان صلوا على طه الرسول محمد خير البرية والنور المؤيد من بالصلاة عليه نال راحة والقلب من أنواره يتجدد يا ربنا اجعلنا على درب الهدى واختم بالخيرات أعمارنا مدى مولاي صل وسلم دائما أبدا على الحبيب المصطفى